It was one of those ordinary Tuesday mornings, the kind where nothing feels urgent and the city moves at its usual sleepy pace. The sun had just climbed over the skyline of downtown Atlanta, casting long shadows across glass towers and busy sidewalks. Cars inched through traffic, coffee cups steamed in commuters' hands, and the air carried that familiar mix of exhaust, fresh bread from a nearby bakery, and the faint hum of ambition that always seemed to hang over the financial district. Inside a sleek high-rise just off Peachtree Street, a man in his early 40s adjusted his cufflinks in front of a full-length mirror. He wasn't flashy, no gold chains, no designer sunglasses tucked into his collar, but there was a quiet confidence in the way he moved. His suit was navy, well-tailored but not loud. His shoes were polished not because he wanted to impress, but because it was simply how he'd been raised. Take care of the details, and the rest will follow. He grabbed his leather portfolio, gave his reflection one last glance, not out of vanity but habit, and headed out. Today wasn't about board meetings or investor calls. It was about a simple transaction, finalizing a wire transfer for a new mixed-use development project on the west side of the city. A project that would bring affordable housing, small business spaces, and a community center to a neighborhood that had been overlooked for decades. To him, it wasn't just business. It was legacy. He drove himself, not because he couldn't afford a driver, but because he liked the quiet time behind the wheel. It gave him space to think. As he pulled into the parking garage beneath the First Metro Bank branch, he felt calm. This was his bank, not just in the sense that he kept accounts there, but in the deeper, more meaningful way. He'd helped shape some of their community investment strategies. He sat on their advisory council. He'd even spoken at their annual leadership summit the year before. The bank knew him, or at least they should have. The branch itself was clean and modern. Glass partitions, digital kiosks, soft lighting. It looked like every other upscale bank in the city, but this one had been his go-to for nearly a decade. He walked in just after 10, nodding politely to the security guard who gave him a quick wave. No one stopped him. No one asked questions. He made his way to the service counter, where a young teller greeted him with a practiced smile. "Good morning. How can I help you today?" she asked. "I need to finalize a wire transfer," he said, keeping his voice even and friendly. "It's been pre-approved. I just need to sign the final authorization." She glanced at her screen, fingers tapping. "Sure thing. Can I get your name and account number?" He gave both without hesitation. She typed, waited, then frowned slightly. It's not pulling up right away. Let me check with the manager." A moment later, a man in his late 30s approached. Sharp suit, slicked back hair, name tag that read Derek. Branch manager. He offered a handshake that was firm but rushed, like he was already thinking about the next thing on his to-do list. "Morning," Derek said, eyes scanning the visitor up and down in a way that wasn't quite hostile but wasn't warm either. "You're here about a wire transfer?" "Yes," the man replied. "It's for Viridian Capital. The file should be under my name. It was approved yesterday by your corporate compliance team." Derek's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Viridian Capital? That's a big name." There was a pause, just a beat too long, before he added, "You're with them?" "I am," the man said simply. He didn't feel the need to explain further. He'd been in this position enough times to know when someone was testing him. Derek crossed his arms. "Right, well, for high-value transfers, we have strict verification protocols. Corporate policy." "Of course," the man said, nodding. "I understand. What do you need?" "Government-issued ID, please. And your account access card if you have it." He pulled out his driver's license and his bank card, both with his name clearly printed. Derek took them, glanced at the license, then back at the man's face as if comparing a photo to a live suspect. He didn't say anything, but the hesitation was there, thick in the air. "You mind stepping over here?" Derek gestured toward a small desk near the back, away from the main counter. "We'll need to run a few extra checks." The man followed, keeping his expression neutral. He'd dealt with this kind of thing before, not often, but enough to recognize the pattern. It wasn't about policy. It was about perception, and right now, in Derek's eyes, he didn't look like someone who belonged in a suit at First Metro Bank handling million-dollar transactions. At the desk, Derek pulled up a screen and began typing slowly, deliberately. "So, You're saying you're authorized to move funds on behalf of Viridian Capital? I'm not just authorized, the man said, voice still calm. I founded it. Derek let out a short laugh, more of a scoff, really. Okay, look, I don't doubt you're involved, but we've had issues with impersonation lately, especially with high net worth accounts. Corporate's been on us hard about it. I get it, the man said, but if you check your internal directory, you'll see my profile. I'm listed as a key client. I've been with this branch for 9 years. Derek didn't look up. We still need to follow procedure. He picked up a phone and dialed an extension. Hey, it's Derek. Got a guy here claiming to be the CEO of Viridian Capital. Wants to push a wire. Yeah, I know. Sounds off, right? Can you pull up his file and confirm? What? No, I don't have a callback number. Just verify, please. The man stood there, arms at his sides, watching. He could feel the eyes of other customers drifting toward them. A woman waiting in line shifted her weight. A man checking his phone glanced up, then quickly looked away. After a minute, Derek hung up. They're looking into it, he said, not meeting the man's gaze. Might take a while. You can wait here or come back later. I'd prefer to wait, the man said. This transfer needs to go through today. Derek shrugged. Suit yourself. But just so you know, if this turns out to be a misrepresentation, we'll have to involve security. The words landed like a quiet threat. Not loud, not aggressive, but clear enough. The man didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his inside jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He unlocked it, opened his email, and scrolled to a message from First Metro's chief risk officer, sent just last week, thanking him for his input on their new equity lending program. He turned the screen toward Derek. This is from your own executive team, he said evenly. Sent to me directly. Does that help? Derek glanced at the screen, then looked away. Emails can be faked, he muttered. Now a flicker of frustration rose in the man's chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry wouldn't help. He'd learned that long ago. Instead, he took a slow breath and said, then call them. Call the chief risk officer, or the regional director. They'll confirm who I am in 10 seconds. Derek hesitated. His fingers tapped the desk. That's not how we handle client verification, he said stiffly. We have protocols. Protocols that ignore your own internal records? The man asked, voice still low but firmer now. I've walked into this branch dozens of times. I've signed loan agreements here. I've met your staff at bank events. And today you're treating me like I'm trying to scam you, just because I walked in alone without an entourage. Derek's jaw tightened. I'm just doing my job. Your job includes serving your clients with respect, the man said, not making them prove their existence like they're on trial. A beat of silence passed. The hum of the air conditioner filled the space. The teller at the front counter pretended to be busy with paperwork. The security guard near the door shifted his stance. Finally, Derek stood up. Look, if you're really who you say you are, then you'll understand why we have to be careful. But if you're not, well, we can't take that risk. The man looked him straight in the eye. I'm not asking you to take a risk. I'm asking you to do your job correctly. Derek crossed his arms again. Until we get confirmation from corporate, I can't process anything. Fine, the man said. He closed his portfolio and stood. But I'm not leaving. He walked back to the waiting area and sat down in one of the plush chairs near the window. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, like someone who'd hoped things had changed but was reminded once again that they hadn't. Outside, the city kept moving. Cars honked. People hurried to meetings. Life went on. But inside that bank, something had shifted. The air felt heavier. The smiles from the staff seemed forced. And the man in the navy suit? He wasn't just waiting for a wire transfer anymore. He was waiting to see if this institution he'd trusted, this bank that claimed to value inclusion and partnership, would finally live up to its own words. He pulled out his phone again, not to show an email this time, but to send a quick text. Just 3 words. It's happening again. Then he leaned back, folded his hands, and waited. Not with rage, but with quiet resolve. Because he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about him. It was about every person who'd ever been made to feel like they didn't belong, even when they'd built the table they were being denied a seat at. The minutes stretched like taffy in the quiet hum of the bank lobby. Sunlight slanted through the tall windows, catching dust motes in the air. But the warmth outside didn't reach the man sitting in the waiting area. He kept his posture relaxed, legs crossed, hands resting on his portfolio, But inside, a slow burn had started, not hot enough to explode, but steady, like a pilot light refusing to go out. He'd been here before, not in this exact spot, but in this feeling. The invisible wall that rose whenever someone looked at him and saw everything except who he actually was. A few customers glanced his way, then quickly looked down at their phones or shuffled papers. No one spoke to him. No one offered an apology. The branch manager, Derek, had returned to his glass-walled office, occasionally peeking out like a sentry watching a suspicious package. The teller who'd first greeted him now avoided eye contact entirely, typing with exaggerated focus. He checked his watch. 23 minutes had passed since he'd asked for the transfer. 23 minutes of being treated like a problem instead of a client. He thought about the project waiting on this wire, the construction crew ready to break ground, the families who'd been promised new homes by fall. Delays like this weren't just inconvenient. They cost real money, real trust. He stood up, smoothed his jacket, and walked back toward the service desk. Not with anger in his step, but with purpose. "I'd like to speak with someone who can actually verify my account," he said, voice calm but firm. Derek emerged from his office before the teller could respond. "I told you," he said, arms crossed again. "We're waiting on corporate." "Then let me speak to corporate myself," the man replied. "Give me the number, or better yet, put me through." Derek's expression tightened. "That's not how it works. We handle verification internally." "But you're not verifying," the man pointed out. "You're stalling. And while you do, a major community project is on hold. That affects people, real people, not just numbers on a screen." Derek shifted his weight. "Look, I get that you're frustrated, but I've got protocols to follow. If you were really who you say you are, this wouldn't be an issue." The words landed like a slap wrapped in bureaucracy. The man didn't raise his voice. He leaned in slightly, just enough so only Derek could hear. "You know what the real issue is? You didn't check your system. You didn't call your own compliance line. You took one look at me and decided I didn't fit the picture in your head of what a CEO should look like. And now you're hiding behind protocol to justify it." Derek's face flushed. "That's not fair," he said, but his eyes darted away. "Fair?" the man said softly. "Fair is treating every client with the same standard of respect, not making some prove their worth while others walk in and get a handshake." A woman in a business suit waiting nearby cleared her throat and stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said to Derek, "but I've been watching this. I've seen how you've treated him, and honestly, it doesn't look right." Derek turned to her, flustered. "Ma'am, this is a private matter." "It's not private when it's happening in front of everyone," she said. "And I've banked here for years. I've never seen someone treated like this just for asking to do business." Another customer, an older man with a cane, nodded slowly. "Yeah, seems off." Derek's confidence wavered. He glanced around, suddenly aware that the room had gone quiet. Even the background chatter of phones and keyboards had stopped. All eyes were on him. "I'm just doing my job," he repeated, but the words sounded hollow now. "No," the man said gently. "You're doing your job poorly, and you're making your bank look bad in the process." He pulled out his phone again. This time he didn't show an email. He opened his contacts, scrolled to a name near the top, no title, just a first and last name, and hit call. It rang twice. "Hey," he said when the person answered. "It's me." "Yeah, I'm at the downtown branch." "Right now?" "No, not about the usual. I'm being refused service by the branch manager." "Yeah." "He won't verify my account, won't call corporate, won't even look me up in the system. Just keeps asking for more ID like I'm trying to rob the place." He paused, listening. "No, I haven't escalated yet, but I think it's time." He held the phone out toward Derek. "It's the regional director. She'd like to speak with you." Derek froze. His face went pale. "The regional director?" "Yes," the man said. "Go ahead, take the call." Derek hesitated, then reached for the phone with a shaky hand. "Hello?" His voice cracked slightly. He listened for a few seconds, then his shoulders slumped. Yes, ma'am. I understand. No, I didn't realize. Yes, right away. He handed the phone back, looking like he'd just been handed a sentence instead of a device. The man ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. She's sending someone. Should be here in 10 minutes. Derek swallowed hard. I didn't know. You didn't ask, the man corrected. That's the difference. He walked back to his chair, but this time, he didn't sit. He stood near the window, watching the street below. People walked with purpose, unaware of the quiet drama unfolding behind glass. He thought about all the times he'd chosen to let things go, brushed off a rude comment, ignored a suspicious glance, smiled through microaggressions because it wasn't worth the fight. But today wasn't about ego, it was about principle. And about sending a message. You don't get to decide who belongs based on how they look. Within 5 minutes, 2 people in dark suits entered the bank, both with First Metro lanyards, both moving with urgency. One was a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and a no-nonsense stride. The other was a younger man carrying a tablet, eyes scanning the room like a security detail. The woman spotted him immediately. Her face softened with recognition, then hardened with anger as she took in the scene. "Sir," she said, approaching with a hand extended. "I am so sorry this happened. I'm Evelyn Carter, Regional Vice President. This is completely unacceptable." He shook her hand. "Thank you for coming so quickly." She turned to Derek, who had stepped forward, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Derek," she said, voice low but sharp as glass, "what exactly is going on here?" I was just following protocol," he stammered. "He came in asking to move a large sum, and I needed to verify his identity." "Did you check the client database?" Evelyn interrupted. "Well, did you call compliance? I was waiting for them to call me back. You didn't initiate the call yourself?" Derek fell silent. Evelyn turned back to the man. "Sir, may I ask, did he ask for your ID?" "Yes. I gave him my driver's license and bank card. Did he attempt to look you up in our internal system?" "No. He assumed I was impersonating someone." Evelyn closed her eyes for a brief second, as if gathering strength. Then she opened them and looked at Derek with a gaze that could freeze water. "You had a client, a known high-value client, standing right in front of you offering valid identification, and you chose not to verify through official channels. Instead, you questioned his legitimacy, delayed service, and created a hostile environment. Is that correct?" Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. He nodded weakly. Evelyn turned to the younger man with the tablet. "Pull up his profile. Now." The assistant tapped a few keys. Within seconds, a full dossier appeared. Photo, account, history, advisory board membership, recent communications with executives. The screen even showed a note from last month. Key relationship, handle with highest priority. Evelyn held the tablet so Derek could see it. "This has been in the system for years. You didn't even try." Derek looked like he might be sick. I thought maybe it was a scam. We've had phishing attempts." "This isn't a phishing attempt," Evelyn said coldly. "This is a man who has trusted our institution with millions of dollars and his professional reputation. And you treated him like a criminal." She turned back to the man. "Again, I am deeply sorry. We will make this right immediately. Your transfer will be processed within the hour, no further questions asked, and we will conduct a full review of this incident." He nodded. "I appreciate that, but it's not just about the transfer." "I know," she said quietly. "And we'll address that too." She turned to Derek. "You're coming with me." She led him toward a private conference room, motioning for the assistant to follow. Before she closed the door, she gave the man a small, respectful nod. Inside the conference room, the air was thick with tension. Evelyn didn't sit. She stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. "Derek," she began, "do you understand why this is so serious?" He nodded, eyes on the floor. "I made a mistake." "It's more than a mistake," she said. It's a breach of our core values. First Metro prides itself on inclusion, on trust, on treating every client with dignity. What you did today wasn't just poor judgment, it was discriminatory. Whether you meant it or not, the impact is the same. I didn't mean to, he started. Intent doesn't erase impact, she cut in. And in your position, you should know better. You've been through our bias training. You've signed our code of conduct. And yet, when faced with a black man in a suit asking to do legitimate business, your first instinct was suspicion, not service. Derek looked up, eyes pleading. I swear I wasn't thinking about race. I was just being cautious. Then, why? Evelyn asked. Have we never had a single complaint about you treating white clients this way? Why is it always the same pattern? Clients of color, especially men, being asked for extra ID, questioned, delayed. The data doesn't lie. Derek. He had no answer. Outside the conference room, the man waited. He didn't pace. He didn't fume. He simply stood, watching the city move on. A delivery truck double-parked. A street performer started playing saxophone on the corner. Life didn't stop for injustice, but maybe, just maybe, institutions could be forced to catch up. 10 minutes later, Evelyn emerged. She walked straight to him. We've initiated an immediate internal review, she said. Derek has been placed on administrative leave, effective now. His access to client systems has been suspended. And depending on the findings, which I expect to be clear-cut, he will be terminated. The man exhaled slowly. It wasn't vengeance he wanted. It was accountability. Thank you, he said. But that's not enough, Evelyn continued. We need to do better. And I'd like your input on how we fix this, not just here, but across the region. He considered her words. This wasn't just about one bad manager. It was about a system that allowed this to happen repeatedly. If he walked away now, it might happen again to someone else, somewhere else. I'll help, he said. But only if it's real change. Not just a memo and a training video. You have my word, Evelyn said. Just then, Derek was escorted out of the conference room by security, not roughly, but firmly. He didn't look at anyone. His tie was crooked, his face ashen. As he passed the man, he paused for half a second as if to say something. But no words came. He just kept walking, head down, out the front doors and into the sunlight. No longer a gatekeeper, just a man who'd lost his keys. The man watched him go, not with satisfaction, but with a quiet sadness. Because Derek wasn't a monster. He was a product of assumptions, of unchecked bias, of a culture that still equated authority with a certain look. And until that changed, there would always be another Derek, another waiting room, another person made to feel like a stranger in their own life. But today, at least, the system had blinked. And that was a start. The silence that followed Derek's exit wasn't empty. It was heavy, like the air after a thunderclap. People in the bank slowly returned to what they were doing, but no one spoke loudly. No one laughed. Even the tellers typed more quietly, as if the walls themselves were listening. The man stood near the window, watching the street, but his mind was already moving forward. He wasn't here just to get a wire transfer approved. He was here because something deeper had been challenged, and now it needed to be rebuilt. Evelyn, the regional vice president, approached again, this time with a softer expression. Let's get you taken care of properly, she said. No more delays, no more questions. She led him past the main counters and into a private client suite, a quiet room with a mahogany table, leather chairs, and a view of the city skyline. It was the kind of space usually reserved for meetings about mergers or estate planning, not for someone who'd just been treated like a suspect in the lobby. A junior associate brought in a tablet and a fresh cup of coffee, black, just how he liked it, though he hadn't even asked. Evelyn must have remembered from past meetings. Small things like that mattered. They showed attention, respect. Within minutes, the wire transfer was pulled up on the screen. All the approvals were already in place from the day before.
The only thing missing was his digital signature. This should have been done before you even walked in the door, Evelyn said, shaking her head.
I've already spoken with compliance. They confirmed everything's in order. You're good to go. He signed with a stylus, his hand steady. As the confirmation screen popped up, transfer initiated, $2.4 million. He felt a quiet relief, not just for the project, but for the principle. The money would move, the work would continue, but more importantly, the message had been sent. You don't get to block progress with prejudice. Evelyn sat across from him, hands folded. I know this isn't just about today, she said. You've been patient with us over the years. You've given feedback, joined panels, even helped shape some of our community lending guidelines. And yet here we are, failing you in the most basic way. He looked at her, not with anger, but with honesty. It's not just me, he said. I've got a team, clients, partners, people who look like me, who walk into places like this every day and get asked, are you sure you're in the right office? Or can you prove you belong here? It wears on you. Not because you doubt yourself, but because you keep having to prove what should be obvious. Evelyn nodded slowly. We've done bias training. We've updated policies. But clearly it's not sticking at the ground level, especially with managers who think caution means assume the worst. It's not caution, he said. It's assumption. And assumption without verification is just prejudice with paperwork. She winced slightly. That's fair. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the building's ventilation the only sound. Outside, a delivery van honked. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang. Then Evelyn leaned forward. I want to make this right, not just with an apology but with action. And I'd like your help designing it. He raised an eyebrow. You're asking me to help fix your bank? I'm asking you to help us become the institution we claim to be, she corrected. You see things we don't. You live experiences we only read about in reports. If we're serious about change, we need voices like yours at the table, not just as clients, but as partners in rebuilding trust. He thought about it. Walking away would feel good, clean even, but it wouldn't stop the next person from facing the same thing. Real change didn't happen in outrage alone. It happened in rooms like this when people with power chose to listen. All right, he said, but I won't do it alone. I'll bring in leaders from our community investment network, people who've built businesses, nonprofits, credit unions, people who know what it's like to be told no before they even finish their sentence. That's exactly what we need, Evelyn said, relief in her voice. Let's start with a working session next week. We'll bring in HR, compliance, frontline staff, and you set the agenda, he nodded. One condition. Name it. No press releases. No photo ops, not yet. If we're doing this, it's because it's right. Not because it looks good, she smiled faintly. Understood. Just then, the door opened slightly. It was the young associate who'd brought the coffee. Ms. Carter? Corporate just called. The CEO saw the internal alert about the incident. He wants a full briefing by 3 o'clock. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. Already? He said, if this is true, I want to know before lunch. The man didn't react outwardly, but inside, he felt a flicker of something new. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. When leadership responds that fast, it means the culture might actually be ready to shift. Back in the lobby, the atmosphere had changed. The staff moved with more care, more awareness. The teller who'd first greeted him gave him a small apologetic nod as he passed. He returned it not out of obligation, but because grace mattered even in correction. As he stepped outside, the Atlanta sun hit his face. The city felt different now, not because anything had physically changed, but because something inside him had. He hadn't come here to make a scene. He'd come to do business, but sometimes doing business meant demanding dignity as part of the transaction. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from one of his project leads. Wire came through. Crews mobilizing. We're good to go. He smiled. That was the real victory. Not the firing, not the apology, but the fact that families would still get their homes on time. That progress hadn't been derailed by someone's narrow view of who belongs. He walked to his car, but before getting in, he paused. He looked back at the bank's glass facade, gleaming, modern, full of promise. It was just a building. But buildings are made of people, and people can change. Later that afternoon, he sat in his office reviewing blueprints for the new development. The walls were lined with photos, not of awards or headlines, but of community meetings, kids playing in renovated parks, small business owners cutting ribbons. This was why he did what he did. Not for the titles, not for the bank accounts, but for the chance to build something that lasted, and that included everyone. His assistant knocked softly. "You've got a call from First Metro's CEO. He says it's urgent." He sighed, but not with annoyance. "Put him through." A moment later, a calm, measured voice came through the speaker. "Sir, this is Daniel Reeves. I'm the CEO of First Metro. I just reviewed the incident report from this morning and I want to personally apologize." The man listened. He didn't interrupt. He let the apology land fully. "I've known about your work for years," Reeves continued. "You've been a voice of reason in our advisory circles, and for you to be treated that way in one of our branches, it's unacceptable. It reflects a failure in our leadership, not in you." "Thank you for saying that," the man replied. "But apologies only matter if they lead to change." "They will," Reeves said firmly. "Derek's employment is being terminated effective immediately. We're launching a full audit of our client verification protocols, and I'd like you to chair a new task force on inclusive service standards, reporting directly to me." Again, the offer was real. Not performative, not rushed, thoughtful. "I'll consider it," the man said. "But I'll need full authority to bring in external voices. Community leaders, civil rights advocates, even former clients who've had negative experiences." "You'll have it," Reeves said without hesitation. "And I'll make sure you have the resources to do it right." They talked for another 10 minutes about timelines, about transparency, about how to measure real progress, not just check boxes. When they hung up, the man sat back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. He thought about his father, who'd worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on, who'd been turned away from banks in the 70s because they don't lend to people like you. He thought about his daughter, who dreamed of starting her own company one day. Would she walk into a bank and be believed? Or would she too have to carry extra proof of her worth? That's what this was really about. Not one bad manager, not one wire transfer, but the future, and who gets to shape it. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "Hey," he said when the other person answered. "Remember that idea we talked about? Creating a coalition of Black and brown business leaders to hold financial institutions accountable? I think it's time to launch it." There was a pause, then a quiet laugh. "About damn time." They talked for a while, sketching out names, organizations, next steps. By the time he hung up, a plan was forming. Not just to fix one bank, but to change the standard for all of them. Later that evening, he drove past the First Metro branch. It was closed now, lights dimmed, doors locked. But he didn't feel bitterness. He felt responsibility, because now he wasn't just a client. He was a witness. And witnesses have a duty to speak, to act, to ensure that what happened today never becomes normal again. As he turned onto the highway, heading home, he passed a billboard for a new housing development, one his firm had helped fund. It showed a diverse group of families smiling in front of a bright, modern building. Underneath it read, "Built for everyone." He smiled. That was the goal. Not perfection, not blame, but belonging. And today, in a small way, they'd moved closer to it. The next morning, the bank branch felt different. Not just quieter, but heavier, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Staff moved carefully, speaking in hushed tones, glancing toward the manager's office that now sat empty, blinds drawn. A temporary supervisor had been assigned, but no one knew her name yet. She kept to herself, reviewing files, making calls, trying to steady a ship that had suddenly sprung a leak. Inside a small conference room on the 2nd floor, away from customer view, a more serious meeting was underway. Evelyn sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 members of Human Resources and the bank's chief compliance officer. Across from them, Derek sat alone, his hands folded tightly on the polished wood surface. He wore the same suit as yesterday, but it looked rumpled now, like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red-rimmed, his posture slumped. The confidence that had filled his voice just 24 hours ago was gone, replaced by something raw and uncertain. Evelyn opened a manila folder. "Derek," she began, her voice calm but firm, "we've completed our preliminary review. We've reviewed security footage, spoken with witnesses, and examined your actions against our code of conduct, our anti-discrimination policy, and our client service standards." He nodded slowly, not looking up. "What happened yesterday wasn't a simple mistake," she continued. "It was a pattern of behavior that violated multiple core principles of this institution. You were presented with valid identification. You were told the client's name and account details. You had access to internal systems that would have instantly confirmed his identity, including his status as a board-level advisory client. Yet you chose not to use them. Derek finally looked up. I thought I was being careful. We've had fraud alerts. I didn't want it. You didn't want to what? Evelyn asked gently, but with steel underneath. You didn't want to trust a black man in a suit? Is that it? He flinched. No, that's not what I meant. Then explain this, she said, sliding a printed email across the table. It was from 6 months earlier. A complaint from another client, a woman of South Asian descent, who'd been asked to prove she owned her business account despite presenting her EIN, business license, and bank card. The complaint had been logged, but no action had been taken. Derek had been the manager on duty then, too. And this? Evelyn added, placing another sheet down. This one from last year. A Latino entrepreneur had been denied access to his commercial line of credit until he brought in his business partner, who happened to be white. Again, Derek had been involved. Derek stared at the papers like they were burning his fingers. I didn't remember those, he whispered. But the pattern is clear, said the compliance officer. In every case, the client was a person of color. In every case, you demanded extra verification that you never asked of white clients. In every case, you assumed deception before you assumed legitimacy. Derek's throat worked as he swallowed. I swear I never thought about race, I guess I thought certain people were more likely to be scammers. And where did that idea come from? Evelyn asked, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. Because it's not in our training. It's not in our policies. It's not based on data. Fraud happens across all demographics, but your actions suggest you believed otherwise. He was silent for a long time. Then quietly, maybe I picked it up over the years. From other managers, from things people said offhand. Like, you gotta watch out for those guys, they'll try anything. I never questioned it. I just absorbed it. Evelyn sighed. That's the danger. Bias doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And if you don't train yourself to hear it, it starts making decisions for you. She leaned forward. Derek, you're a smart man. You've been with this bank for 8 years. You've received promotions, bonuses, praise. But leadership isn't just about hitting targets. It's about upholding values even when no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching. He looked down again. I messed up. Yes, Evelyn said. You did. And the impact was real. You humiliated a respected client. You delayed a major community project. You damaged trust, not just with him, but with everyone who saw what happened. And you made our bank look like a place where dignity is conditional. She paused, letting the weight settle. Effective immediately, she said. Your employment with First Metro Bank is terminated. Your access has already been revoked. Security will escort you out after this meeting to collect your personal items. You'll receive your final paycheck and severance as outlined in your contract, but your eligibility for future rehire is revoked. Derek didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just nodded, his shoulders sagging like a building losing its foundation. I understand, he said, voice barely above a whisper. As he stood to leave, Evelyn added one last thing. This isn't the end of your story, Derek, but it should be a turning point. I hope you take this seriously, not as a punishment, but as a wake-up call. Because if you go to another bank and do the same thing, you'll hurt more people, and you'll keep hurting yourself. He stopped at the door, hand on the knob. For a moment it looked like he might say something else, but he just nodded again and stepped out. 2 security officers waited outside. They didn't cuff him or speak harshly. They simply walked with him down the hall, past the empty manager's office, past the tellers who avoided his gaze, out through the front doors and into the morning light. He didn't look back. Inside the conference room, the team sat in silence for a full minute. Well, the compliance officer finally said, that was long overdue. Evelyn rubbed her temples. One person is gone, but the system that let this happen? That's still here, and we've got work to do. Meanwhile, across town, the man sat in a small coffee shop near his office, sipping black coffee and reviewing notes for the upcoming task force meeting. He hadn't slept much either, but not from anger, from thinking. About Derek, about the years of unchecked assumptions, about how easy it is to become the gatekeeper without realizing you're locking people out. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Evelyn. It's done. He's gone. He read it, then set the phone down. He didn't feel joy. He didn't feel revenge. He felt responsibility. Because firing one person wouldn't fix a culture. It would take training, transparency, and most importantly, new voices in the room. Later that day, he met with 3 community leaders in a sunlit community center on the west side, the same neighborhood where his new development was breaking ground. There was a retired school principal who now ran a financial literacy program for teens, a young Latina entrepreneur who'd bootstrapped a catering business into a regional brand, and a former bank teller, now a credit union director who'd left First Metro years ago after facing similar treatment. They sat around a folding table, paper cups of coffee between them. So they fired him, the entrepreneur said, raising an eyebrow. Just like that? Just like that, he confirmed. But that's the easy part. The hard part, the credit union director added, is making sure it doesn't happen again. And not just at this bank, everywhere. That's why I called you, he said. I've agreed to lead this task force, but I won't do it alone. I need your eyes, your experiences, your honesty. The school principal leaned forward. What do you need from us? First, he said, help me design a new client verification protocol. One that's secure but respectful. No more prove your you theater. Second, help create a real feedback system where clients can report bias without fear of retaliation. And third, help us train the trainers. Because if we're serious, the people teaching inclusive service can't just be HR folks who've never been on the receiving end of this. They talked for hours about microaggressions disguised as policy, about how professionalism is often coded language for act like us, about the exhaustion of constantly having to code switch just to be taken seriously. By the end of the meeting, they had a rough outline, and more importantly, they had trust. What you've learned, Derek nodded. I want to help. Not at a bank, maybe never again. But I want to talk to other managers, share my mistakes so they don't repeat it. That's a start, the man said. They left the diner without promises, but with a quiet understanding. Redemption isn't given. It's earned, one right choice at a time. Back at the development site, construction moved fast. Walls rose. Windows gleamed. Local artists painted murals on the exterior, scenes of community, resilience, joy. The first business to sign a lease was a Black-owned bookstore. The second, a Latina-run bakery. The third, a tech co-working space for young entrepreneurs of color. The man walked the site every Friday not as an owner but as a neighbor. He'd stop to talk to workers, ask about their families, listen to their ideas. This wasn't his monument. It was theirs. One afternoon, as he stood watching a crew pour concrete for the community center's foundation, his phone rang. It was the bank's CEO. We just got our first quarterly report, Reeves said. Complaints related to bias are down 68%. Staff participation in dignity training is at 94%. And client retention in underserved communities has gone up for the first time in 5 years. That's good, the man said. But keep going. Don't stop because the numbers look better. We won't, Reeves promised. And we'd like you to stay on the task force long term. I'll stay, he said. As long as the work is real, it was. And it spread. Other banks took notice. Not because of headlines, but because clients started asking, do you have a dignity protocol? Do you track bias complaints? Who's your client experience advocate? First Metro's changes became a quiet benchmark. The man never sought fame for any of it. He turned down interviews, declined awards. He didn't want to be the face of the story. He wanted the story to be about the system, not the scandal, but the solution. Months later, on a cool fall morning, he walked into the same downtown branch again. This time, he wasn't there for a transaction. He was there to meet a group of high school students from the financial literacy program, the same one run by the retired principal. They were learning about banking careers, and the branch had opened its doors for a tour. As he entered, the new branch manager, a woman who'd started as a teller 10 years ago, greeted him with a warm smile. Good to see you, she said. The students are in the conference room. He nodded. Thanks. As he passed the service counter, a young teller looked up, recognized him, and gave a small, respectful nod. No hesitation, no suspicion, just acknowledgement. He kept walking, but something inside him settled. Not because he'd been proven right, but because the next generation wouldn't have to prove themselves just to be seen. Later, as he spoke to the students, answering their questions about entrepreneurship, risk, and resilience, he watched their faces light up with possibility. One young man raised his hand. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something because of how you look? The man paused. Yes, many times. What did you do? I kept going, he said, and I made sure the door stayed open for the person behind me. That, he realized, was the real legacy. Not the buildings, not the bank reforms, but the belief that belonging isn't earned. It's given, freely, fully, to everyone. And as he left the branch that day, the sun low in the sky, he knew the work wasn't finished. It never would be, but it was moving forward. One honest conversation, one policy change, one act of courage at a time, because change doesn't roar. It builds quietly together, and it always starts with someone refusing to accept the way it's always been.